My name is Bobby David Boyle. I am Sierra Leonean and Washington-based correspondent for the African Agribusiness magazine. I'm also affiliated with Star Radio, Star TV in Freetown, Sierra Leone. I'm here with Mr. Babatunde G. Lamin, who is a crew member for Star TV based here in Freetown, Sierra Leone. I'm happy to be here in the office of the Chief Immigration Officer, Mr. Alpha Khalifa Kroma, for a brief interview. And hello, Mr. Khalifa.
Good evening, and thank you for coming here.
Okay. First of all, I want to ask you, how did you come to be the Chief Immigration Officer of the Republic of Sierra Leone in 2007 during the first Ernest Bai Koroma administration?
Thank you very much, Mr. Bobby. It's quite a very important question. I was in the United Kingdom, practicing as a lawyer. And after my studies, first of all, little did I know that President Koroma's time for becoming the leader of this country was well nigh. And he approached me when he was a leader of the opposition party then and said to me that if I happen to become the president of the Republic of Sierra Leone, you're going to be one of the young guys I would have to recruit to go and work with the administration. And of course, it surprised me a great deal that subsequently Mr. Kroma won the elections of 2007. And when it did happen, I called him to congratulate him. And he said, well, as I promised, I think you need to come over for us to come and have a tete-a-tete. And indeed, I came over. And when I came over, he was so magnanimous in his approach in terms of the position that I would like in the country. And I only had to leave the whole bulk of the solution, to be provided by him. And he came up with the proposition that I would like you to come and revamp the immigration services in this country. And I was very much appreciative of that proposal. And I said, I'll do my very best to do the work that you are planning to give me. So, and that's it. And I had to go back to the UK, get ready, and then I moved into Sierra Leone and started work in this country in 2008, in April of that particular year. And that's how I became the Chief Immigration Officer by appointment of the Chief Executive and was endorsed by the Parliament of the Republic of Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Mr. Khalifa. I'll be interested to know if prior to your appointment in 2007, you played an active role in the politics of the All People's Congress, or even in the campaign of His Excellency the President before your appointment.
That's correct. I was an activist of the All People's Congress Party in UK and Ireland. And during that time, I was in fact the president of the All People's Congress Party Youth League in England. And subsequently, I became the director of the international affairs of the party. I became the director of the international affairs of the party in the UK. So I have been very much instrumental alongside my compatriots within the party and Sierra Leoneans in the diaspora, to the point that the significant role that I did play, was not underestimated at all. So I would say, quote and unquote, I have been substantially and adequately a strong and a fervent, activist of the party in the UK in those days.
Okay, thank you. What background and experiences did you bring to the job of Chief Immigration Officer?
Well, Mr. Bobby, initially I was a police officer when I graduated with you, of course, from the University of Sierra Leone. So the police department was my first institution. And after having, headed some of the various units of the police department until to the point wherein I was transferred to this particular entity. Then it was under the administration of the police department. I became an officer commanding the foreign nationals of the immigration department. So with my experience that I've got, I've had to leave this country during the period of the political disturbances and instability of the country. And then I went to the United Kingdom. And when I went abroad, well, I did not forget the fact that, I had served also the United Nations Observer Mission in Sierra Leone as a security analyst. So with this background, and plus the academic posture that I went and gained in the UK, in furtherance of a Master of Science degree in Security and Risk Management, and subsequently I became a lawyer, working in various firms, etc. I believed these were adequate background and experiences that I've got in the past, that without me knowing I was going to be made the chief immigration officer in this country, well, I've got to bring all of these experiences and background to the office, and this has made me to become one of the most successful, heads of this institution in the country.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kuroma. Quite an excellent background, I must say. Please describe in brief the state of affairs of the Office of Immigration when you assumed the position of chief of the office in 2007.
The status of the department then was appalling, and not to mention the very structure itself, which was as derelict as ever. And the internal parts of that particular structure was nothing to write home about at the time. Because I remember those days when I was working at Central, the stench and all that was characterized of, the immigration department then. So I wasted no time in trying to make, the internal structure of it, giving it a more pristine kind of look so that it befits an entity that should be receiving guys from outside of this country, and even from some of the nationals of the country. So I tried in my little way to try and give, like I did say, the internal structure a kind of a pristine look. And it became a bit comfortable, not only for the workers in it, but also the people that are coming from different parts of the world that are doing business with us. And of course, the discipline was also something that I needed to look at. There was gross indiscipline, gross mismanagement. The entire entity was systemless, and there were no systems and procedures at all. And looking at the various functionalities of the department, I wasted no time and started work with those that were really willing to work with me. It was quite an uphill task, quite a Herculean task to try and bring an entity that has gone down the doldrums to where you had wanted it to be, so that people can see or could see, a little different from what you used to obtain. The status of it was absolutely bad. And of course, there was no structure, no management strategy. So strategically, I started work with them. And of course, amidst opposition and resistance, I was very stubborn to make sure that the systems and procedures that are going to put in place were workable. They had to be accepted by us for us to be seen as people who were ready to make a change. Because at the time, the personnel in that department had been used to business as usual. And I was never a friend to them. I was never a friend to the public who wanted to do odd things with them.
Well, when you say the conditions and environment was less than pristine, do you mean that the whole environment, the working environment needed a facelift, or things were below standard and needed to be revamped?
Absolutely, things were below standard. And the entire structure needed a facelift. All the more reason why I had to push and push and push until His Excellency the President gave me, a nod of approval for the establishment to be moved where I am today, which was the former Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you. So, please explain some of your most difficult challenges during the early years of your administration as Chief Immigration Officer.
Lots of them actually, but I could just summarize, those challenges. First of all, in trying to get your colleague workers to understand that we needed a change, it's quite a very difficult thing. One, they resisted to the point that everything was difficult for me to be able to make headway. You know, there are those that were complaining to higher authorities that I was very strict, that I was a bad guy, that I've come to wreck the system as a whole. And these are the resistors, actually. Because as you know, people resisted change when I just came. And again, one other major challenge that I encountered, I hardly ever knew who was, a bona fide worker of this institution. Because there are lots of guys hanging around in that particular previous place where we were, and they were putting on an attire that looked like as if he was part and parcel of the administration. Until subsequently, what I'd done was to try and change the uniforms and gave them identity cards, yes, cards, so to speak, so that people that are out there could understand who the immigration officer was from the indisciplined hoodlums.
Are you saying there were workers who were impersonating immigration officers
Absolutely,
in the
that's
department?
exactly what I meant. Impersonators. And a good number of them today, when I took over, joined the bandwagon of the ones that are working with them to make things difficult. And I think that had been the tradition, So for you to be able to break through the tradition those days was a Herculean task. But I succeeded in doing so with the use of some of the armed police personnel that I brought in to surround the entire building and started monitoring those that are coming to do real business with the department.
Any other significant challenges?
Yes, of course. Well, of course, in every community, when you just took over, you would have to face some political pressure, But again, I thank God because the head of state was absolutely, and even as I speak, is absolutely supporting, the change that I came and introduced in this department. So the political pressure was there, the indisciplined hoodlum that was introduced by those that are inside of the structure and outside of the structure was also, a kind of thing that I had to face. And even the international pressure I was also getting, the blame from each and every corner of some parts of the world that our passports are being misused and all the rest of it. So these are all the things I had to encounter that I had to fight, and I succeeded in handling them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Korifa. So, what strategies did you use to overcome your difficulties during the first 5 years of your administration?
First of all, I have to start with myself. When I face those kinds of difficulties, walking through difficult terrain, I managed my anger because it wasn't easy. And I tried to be very much professional in engaging them, in giving them lectures upon lectures, in telling them that we need to change. We should be ashamed when people are finger pointing at us to say we are corrupt. And it is the very fabric, you understand, of these corrupt practices that wrecked the entire system. And I said, we have to change from this. And like I did say, the resistance was very strong. But I kept on plodding on. I never stopped at all, in plodding on, in trying to do the right thing. And I spoke to them. I said, look, if we cannot change, we cannot make a difference. If you don't put away, these attitudes of yours that we always have to do business as usual, it's difficult for us to be able to achieve. Some of them resorted into the press by castrating me and all the rest of it. But I resisted the press as well. And I tried to prove to them that I have come to do business, and I meant to do business so that we can change, the posture of things. We can change the management style by applying some strategic management policies and principles that can really make a difference. And by so doing, I got some followers from them. And some of them had never been to higher education. And I encouraged them for them to be able to know the difference between what is bad and from what is good. So they swallowed the bait. Good number of them, as I speak today, have been to institutions of learning. They have acquired a master's degrees, they have acquired a bachelor's degrees, etc. And I've taken a good number of them outside to see immigration services at work within the sub-region and outside of the sub-region. So all of these strategies being put together started making a difference. And what was the order of the day, like I did mention, of the corrupt practices? I changed from the previous passport that I inherited to the machine-readable ones. The machine-readable ones could not really curb the corrupt practices entirely until now that we have achieved, the biometrics regime, which is absolutely a great difficulty for people to do the kind of things they've been used to doing in acquiring them.
Excellent. So, please describe the structure of your office in 2007. What has changed during the last 10 years with you at the helm of affairs at the Office of Immigration?
Lots actually, have changed.
Let's start with the structure of your office in 2007.
The structure in 2007, like I did say, was a derelict structure. It was quite an old-fashioned building that did not befit, the function of modern-day immigration services. It was absolutely an eyesore, externally and internally.
Apart from the physical structure in terms of building, how about the structure of the office itself, in terms of departments, units, and what have you?
First of all, the places to work in were absolutely, tiny. They were unkempt. They were dirty. So what I'd done was to engage by then the accountants that came and worked with me at the time to do a divisional, aspect of the insides of the building with cardboards and all the rest of it, for me to be able to provide some work to people that can do the work, So when that happened, we realized that people started working, and some divisions also of the main entrance of the building was done for me to be able to create like a customer service department, a public relations office, etc., etc., etc. And I was able to manage within the limited space that was available then to structure it in ways that we were able to manage the affairs of the department. And that was not enough because the department was growing. The numbers that I had engrafted into the system was also growing. So we needed a bigger space. Now, as a result of that, I led a delegation of senior officials because at the time, one hardly ever understood the job that one was doing because the job wasn't structured at all. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry was just running after application forms, was just running after people that are coming for passport. And immigration, as I looked at it, and even as it is today, its job is not just, the issuance of passports. A third of its responsibility is that. Consequently, we've got to look at the international aspects of the department that has got to do with working with embassies, that has got to do with making representations abroad, that has got to do with repatriations and deportations, that has got to do with training facilities and all the rest of it. So I led a delegation to the president and asked him if I could be given the opportunity to at least maintain a certain portion of the revenue generated for me to be able to put up my building. At that time, I wasted no time in presenting to him a modern design of an immigration service, which the president looked and admired it and said, this is quite a very good idea. But as at now, the administration was just very new and wanted money to help speed up the progress that we have embarked upon. Then I said, okay, sir, if it's not possible, then I've just heard of a new Ministry of Foreign Affairs structure that's under construction. Should I now have your approval, that when that structure is finished, I should now inherit the previous Ministry of Foreign Affairs structure, and he gave me thumbs up, and that's where we are today. With here now, it is absolutely fantastic in the sense that I have developed structurally, an upward mobility of the personnel that had never existed at all. Today, we could boast of having directors, deputy directors, assistant directors, senior immigration officers, until it comes down, so that you don't, the workers that are working for the department don't get frustrated as to the fact that I have just been kept in one particular position without any upward mobility. So I worked alongside with the Human Resource Management Office that was originally called the Establishment Office. In your time, that was what you left in this country. So we worked together with them. We undertook a study of what needed to be done for me to be able to achieve the new structure that I've created. And we worked with the public management, BMS, the public management something that is now being headed by a director. So they came and, conducted a research to as far as the provinces, and they accepted with the kind of change that I wanted to structure the entire, workplace. And that is where we are today. So, an agreement was given to that effect, and today we are doing a wonderful job. Today, that kind of frustration that's used to wear an ugly head of the personnel is no longer there. Today, everybody's looking forward to be promoted, and of course, some of them have just been promoted and have just engrafted into the system a new, level of immigration officers that are called border guards. But these are immigration officers in a sense. We call them border guards because the borders have not been managed before. There hadn't been any border guard whatsoever. Though the numbers are yet very small, but they are making a huge difference today in manning some of those areas that have remained unmanned before.
So are you saying that these border guards are deployed at the borders between Sierra Leone and Liberia, and as well as the Republic of Guinea, for example?
That's correct, yes. They're in Kailahun, they're in Balamuya, they're in the border between Liberia and Sierra Leone, they're at the border of Guinea and Kamakwe called Sanya, so many other places. We can find the border guards today.
Are these armed border guards?
Well, we have not reached to the level of immigration service becoming an armed institution, but we're working on it as time goes. I probably might not be here anymore, but I think whoever comes in might think about getting the immigration service, being allowed to carry guns in this country.
So are the border guards working in collaboration with the Sierra Leone police who are deployed at the Sierra Leone borders?
Because of the insufficiency and the inadequacy of the border guards, yes, we're working. Well, that's why the point of collaboration comes in between us and the other security sector agencies like the military, the police, the Office of National Security personnel that are coordinating the activities of all of these security sector family members. Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you, sir. So how has your office interacted with other functionaries of states? For example, the Parliament of Sierra Leone, State House, Sierra Leone Police, and the business community. The second part of that question is, what challenges have you heard operationally in navigating or coordinating with other institutions of government and the Sierra Leone community?
Okay. I'll first of all have to start with my relationship with State House. Don't forget, this office that I'm sitting in is the office of the president, so to speak, because the appointment of the chief immigration officer, constitutionally speaking, is the responsibility of the president of the country. And upon your appointment, you are endorsed by Parliament. Straight away, it tells you that there does exist, theoretically and practically, a relationship between you and these institutions. And that is why I don't do anything funny in terms of the issuance of diplomatic passports if it is not coming from the head of state through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the Immigration Service. Yet again, in terms of naturalization schemes, there is no way I'm working single-handedly without the blessings of His Excellency the President, and that is why the oath of allegiance is being administered by me in the presence of the Chief Executive, and of course, with Parliament, you could find out that almost every other year I'm being summoned by the Public Accounts Committee, by the committee that is in charge of the Internal Affairs Ministry, because the Internal Affairs Ministry is the one that is supervising me, etc., making appearances of some kind to Parliament to be able to explain, the financial management of this institution as a vote controller. So that I've got that kind of responsibility with Parliament. And all other institutions that you've just mentioned in the, for instance, where is it?
Well,
Yeah.
I was talking about challenges you have had operationally
Yes.
in navigating or coordinating with other institutions of government and the Sierra Leone community.
That's correct.
I'm talking about, for example, the Sierra Leone Police,
Okay.
Parliament, that you already spoke about, and of course, the business community.
All right. I started with the collaboration between this department and those institutions. Now I've completed that of the State House, that of the Parliament with the police. Don't forget, this department was under the aegis of the Sierra Leone Police Department many years ago. And it gained its independence in 2001. Then I was not in this country when DFID had to undertake a study and concluded by recommending to the previous administration that Immigration Services had to stand alone. So I came and took a standalone institution. So when I took over the responsibility, you must understand that there are frictions here and there between this department and the police as part of the challenges that I had to go through. But we ironed it out and got them to understand that immigration is a standalone institution and nobody should actually interfere with its functions anymore. Not because it was under the police that you think that, I can exert my influence and authority over them. No, because the chief immigration officer is the leader of the institution appointed by the president and endorsed by Parliament. So he's equally an executive officer in his own right, constitutionally speaking. But again, with explanation upon explanation upon explanation, it got down, to the level wherein it became understandable that it's a standalone institution and it's got to be allowed to do its work. I remember then when, I appointed head of an immigration at the international airport, and there was also a police officer in charge of the airport who wanted to kind of like bulldoze his way through the immigration service, boss. And he said, hey, gone are those days when the immigration service has to be under the aegis of the police department. And you have to stop this kind of thing that you're doing. And the police officer was about to insult the chief immigration officer. And he said, hey, if you insult the chief immigration officer, it's like you're insulting the Inspector General of Police, because the chief immigration officer is not under the aegis of the Inspector General of Police anymore. These kinds of challenges and frictions, here and there, until I had to go to Lungi. I said, look, it is no longer the Alpha Khalifa Nkrumah you used to know in the police department. This is a different Alpha Khalifa Nkrumah. If you don't want to respect me, but respect the chair and office that I'm now sitting on, it belongs to the president. And those kinds of understanding subsequently, rested on the shoulders of them. So again, you sometimes have difficulties with members of parliament, and they endorsed you because some of them are easily understandable, some of them are very critical, some of them are very difficult. But you've got to be professional when you are asked questions regarding the financial management of the institution. Go straight to the records by presenting it to them. And you don't make yourself as if you are being fallacious in what you're presenting to them. So many times, I think I was able to do the right thing, despite me not being perfect, but get to do the right thing and have documentary proof of everything that you're doing to the satisfaction of those people that are making inquiries about your entity. So that's where we are at the time being.
Okay, so what specific measures have you put in place to ensure the protection and integrity of the Sierra Leone passports? And the second part of that question is, can we now say with confidence that stories of selling Sierra Leone passports to undeserving or unscrupulous